Gosh, I feel like elixirs have completely taken over, especially in the designer world. Ever since Dior launched Sauvage Elixir, which I have here in this video, I feel like the designers are now cranking out elixirs. For a while it was parfums, now it's all about elixirs. In this video I'm going to talk to you about 8 different elixirs that I have here targeted to men from the designers. There's 3 more that I'm going to talk to you about, and I feel like there's just about 11 or 12 out there. I couldn't find any more, but I have 8 here, and I'm going to do a ranking of the elixir fragrances from the designers for men. If you want to find out what they are, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. Have you jumped on the elixir bandwagon yet? What are your favorite elixir fragrances? Put a comment down below so I can find out. Of course, the first elixir fragrance I bought for men marketed as an elixir, because there's other fragrances that are called elixirs and not as part of this elixir, concentration movement. But the first one was the Dior Sauvage elixir, which I consider the best in the Sauvage series. I felt like it was a very luxurious take on the original, which got this kind of creamy ambery touches, and of course lots of aromatics and spices. So that is great, but now we have a ton of others. Some are good, some are not that good, and I'm going to rank them here in this video. But let me also tell you there's 3 elixirs that I do not have that I did smell in passing. I haven't really ended up buying them. YSL Y Elixir, I felt it was a bit blah, it was boring. I never was a big fan of that collection, that series of fragrances. The Y series was too boring for me to even buy, and that particular elixir I didn't care for. Let me know if you're a fan of it. So Boss, the Scent Elixir, also not necessarily really released here. I can't find it anywhere. I did smell it in passing in Europe, and it didn't jump out at me, maybe because my nose was shot by the time I smelled it, but I'll have to circle back to it and sample it again to see if it was worth it. Finally, Loewe's Essentia Elixir. I did smell that one as well. Loewe has the Essentia series. There's 2 different concentrations and they both smell completely different. The first one's more like a polo fragrance, the EDT. Then there's the EDP that smells more like an Aventus. This Essentia Elixir is more like Aventus. It's in that kind of same ballpark. So I don't have these 3 fragrances that in this video, so I won't be ranking them. And also, after you watch this video, let me know if I'm missing any elixirs from the designers. This is all I could get my hands on. But starting off the list at number 8, we're going to the house of Hugo Boss. It's Boss Bottled Triumph Elixir. This is a completely unnecessary offering, I think. To me, it's not as good as I wanted it to be, and even though it has patchouli, vetiver, and violet leaves, it doesn't really smell very pleasant. I've sampled many fragrances featuring patchouli and vetiver. Well, maybe the violet leaves comes in as well, but this fragrance is boring, and I feel like what they gave us prior to this, the Boss Bottled Elixir, the original, was really, really good. Why did they do this now? Just to rake in more money, capitalize on the elixir theme, because Boss keeps making elixirs. This is the 3rd elixir I feel like in the men's collection. As I said, Boss, the Scent Elixir, I don't have here. So this is 3 elixirs for men from Boss. But I feel like Boss Bottled Triumph Elixir is quite boring. It somehow taps into the previous Boss Bottled Elixir, but highlighting the patchouli, vetiver, and violet leaves. And I felt it was a dud. And I wanted to love this because it had patchouli in it. It had vetiver. I like these 2 notes together. Here, it's a bit lackluster and boring. So what are your thoughts on this one? Let me know. This is Boss Bottled Triumph Elixir. God, these names are getting confusing. But moving on to the house of Ralph Lauren, it's Ralph's Club Elixir. If you've ever caught my very first review of the first in the series, I completely dissed that fragrance. I felt it was really boring. To me, it reminded me of the DNA of something like Invictus, the original Invictus. And at the time, they hadn't publicized the name of the perfumer. I believe Invictus is created by Dominique Ropion. And the original and this version has been created by Dominique Ropion as well. Never been a big fan of Invictus. This, I feel like they've luxurified it and intensified it, which is pretty decent, but I wouldn't rush out. Especially if you're into the niche world of fragrances and don't do designers, I feel like you can skip this one. But for me, this gives me a little bit of a Dior Homme, intense Dior Homme Parfum vibe because it features loads of Orris butter, Pallida, leather accord, lavandin, cardamom, olibanum, sage, fir balsam, patchouli, geranium, grapefruit, mandarin. Very concentrated, and it's actually like a really heavy duty fragrance. Elixir concentration seems to be Parfum concentrations, but they're just calling them Elixir just to create another flanker. But in the series, this particular fragrance is the best. But to me, as an overall collection, it's not a wow collection. But I feel like if I was going to have to pick one from this series, the Ralph's Club series, I'd definitely go with the Elixir. So let me know if you're a fan of Ralph's Club Elixir. Put a comment down below. Now moving on to the House of Paco Rabanne. We've got two Paco Rabanne fragrances coming back to back because Paco Rabanne seems to be doing a lot of elixirs. Paco Rabanne and also Jean Paul Gaultier are under the distributor or conglomerate of Puig. And so some of their bottles kind of remind me of one another, especially like the Paco Rabanne and Jean Paul Gaultier. This is Le Male Elixir. This is 1 million Elixir. So the coloring kind of seems to be very similar, especially since the fact that they're distributed and owned by the same brand. So Paco Rabanne's 1 million Elixir is a concentrated take on the original, and the story is with that fragrance, a lot of folks think it's overwhelming. So is the Elixir overwhelming? I felt like the Elixir was not that overwhelming next to the Invictus Elixir that I have here, which I'm quite surprised I'm really enjoying it. But 1 million Elixir has notes of Davana, apples, rose Damascena, osmanthus, cedarwood, vanilla absolute, tonka beans, and patchouli. I was actually expecting a nuclear bomb with this one. I'm not getting that. And I feel like the rose kind of tones things down here. Sure, it has the fruitiness that's prominent in the original release. 1 million, I remember the first time I visited France in 2006 is when they had just put out that fragrance. And there was this big campaign at the Galerie Lafayette in the city center of Paris. They were running this video and they were promoting it. I never really got into the fragrance too much, but I felt like having the Elixir here would be great, especially since I got a really, really great deal on both the elixirs of Paco Rabanne's 1 million and also Invictus. So I like this fragrance the most between the three fragrances I've spoken about so far. I feel like as a smell, it's really, really great compared to the other two. I'm not saying it's the best here in this collection, but for some strange reason on me, it's not beast and I wanted it to be, especially if I'm buying something called an elixir and I'm not getting that hefty concentration. To me, it acts a bit more like eau de parfum. So that's a sad thing, but as a smell, I feel like it's good. Let me know your thoughts on the 1 million Elixir. Are you a fan? Does it perform like an elixir, like overwhelming? Do put a comment down below so I can find out. A similar story that happened recently was Bulgari's Man in Black Parfum. I was actually expecting something really hefty, but the fragrance itself was so underwhelming, I was quite disappointed. It acted like an eau de parfum, in fact, maybe a bit like eau de toilette. In fact, it smelled quite a bit like the original fragrance. So that was kind of a similar case to this, but this is a bit stronger than that particular fragrance. But moving on to the House of Paco Rabanne once again, and I'm surprised I'm actually featuring this fragrance here because it's actually pretty darn good for a designer fragrance. It smells quite synthetic. Both of the Paco Rabannes do. But man, this is so hefty and so robust. This is Invictus Victory Elixir, this one right here. It actually smells pretty good. It's very chemically, it's very synthetic for sure, but so beastly, and I like that about it. Performance is amazing with this one. And I kind of like the smell, and thankfully, it only has a light hint of the original DNA. It's that kind of marine sloshed, kind of a soupy, chemically kind of soupy marine thing that is in here in the background, but we've got a lot of lavender in here, so it's very aromatic with green cardamom, so it's very spicy. Black pepper, the incense, patchouli, vanilla beans, tonka beans. I can totally, really wear this one because I like its intensity, its robustness, its beefiness. And also, it's pretty good as a smell, so I've ranked it here at number 5 in this list of elixirs. But do let me know what your thoughts are on this. Again, you're not going to get something niche quality, but it's the best, I think, out of all of the Invictus collection fragrances. I like it, and I like its intensity for sure. So this is Paco Rabanne's Invictus Victory Elixir. Let me know if you're a fan of it. But moving on to the next one, it's Gucci Guilty Elixir de Parfum. So as a smell, I prefer this over the previous fragrance from PACO Rabanne. But once again, it's not as beastly, as potent as the PACO Rabanne. It's a bit subdued compared to that one. I wish they made something a little more potent and more intense and in your face. It acts a bit more like eau de parfum to me, but as a smell, it's really, really great. It's created by Quentin Biche, and I can't remember who the other perfumer is. It Natalie Garcia Cheto? I believe that's the other perfumer that's worked on this with Quentin Biche. But it's Orris butter, Ambrofix, Benzoin, Patchouli, vanilla extract, nutmeg. To me, it has a bit of DNA of fragrances like Jean Paul Gaultier's current Le Male flankers that Quentin Biche has been working on. It also smells a bit like Reflection Man, and of course I've always mentioned Reflection Man has a bit of a reminder of Fleur de Mal from Jean Paul Gaultier. So all of this is really kind of connected somehow. I enjoy the smell, and that's why I featured it here at number 4. Really great smell, but I just wish that it was as potent as the previous fragrance and in your face. But sometimes you don't need that, right? Let me know if you're into the idea of more potency with Gucci Guilty Elixir de Parfum, or you're happy with it, or you think it's too overwhelming. Put a comment down below. But at number 4, it's Gucci Guilty Elixir de Parfum. But moving on to the house of Hugo Boss, it's Boss Bottled Elixir, the original elixir that came out before the Triumph Elixir. And let me know, are you a fan of the original elixir or the Triumph Elixir? I feel like the original elixir, Hugo Boss Bottled Elixir, is really, really great. I much preferred it over the Parfum that came out the previous year, a year after they launched the elixir, which I thought was a really great DNA. The original fragrance I wore in the mid-90s, it doesn't smell much like it, but it is created by the same perfumer. It's Annick Menardo, along with another perfumer here, Suzy Lahey, I believe that's her last name. But this is Patchouli, Labdanum, Cedarwood, Cardamom, frankincense, Vetiver, spices, aromatic spices, some herbal spices here, lots of resins, and of course the earthy patchouli and the amber. It's resinous, and it's kind of like basically what Annick Menardo does really well. She does work really great with resins. Look up fragrances like Bois d'Harmonie, look up fragrances like Bois d'Argent. She does these really great resinous and smoky fragrances, and I think she's brought in her niche world expertise into creating something really stand out as a designer fragrance. Once again, it's not like super beastly like the Invictus, but definitely more potent than the Gucci, and I like the way it smells, and it's a bit more classy and a bit more mature compared to, of course, the PACO Rabannes and the Jean Paul Gaultier. But either way, this is Boss Bottled Elixir. Let me know if you're a fan. And then up next, we've got the fragrance from the house of Dior. It's Sauvage Elixir. Sauvage Elixir came out around 2021, I believe, and it's the fragrance that kind of basically kickstarted the launch of the Elixir movement. I don't know, by the time 2025 comes around, how many more elixirs do you think we're going to have? Put a comment down. Maybe 10 more? I don't know. We'll see. Are there fragrances? I'm hoping they would do one of Dior Homme. Dior Homme Elixir. Do you guys like the sound of that? I feel like Dior Homme Parfum is already pretty potent, but I can go for an elixir. But Sauvage's elixir is a really, really great take on the original Sauvage. The first Sauvage was very ambroxan forward. They overdosed it on the ambroxan and the aromatics, and it's an eau de toilette, and then they launched the eau de parfum and the parfum, and finally they released the elixir, which is a really, really great take on the original. I wouldn't call this a wow fragrance. I still prefer Eau Sauvage, but out of all of these fragrances, I think it's definitely stand out. It's one of the best, minus the first one I'm going to talk to you about, the one at number 1. Because I prefer that the most. But this is great. It's got the lavender, grapefruit, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, cardamom, coumarin, licorice, amber, vetiver, and patchouli. You know, I like it when they throw in licorice or anise or absinthe in fragrances. I quite like that smell, and I'm glad they have it here. You can kind of, spot it when you're wearing it. But I wouldn't call this a licorice bomb or anything. It's more about the lavender and the spices, the warm spices and the fresh spices that are in here. Really great job. One of the better fragrances that Francois Dumarche created for, the men. And this is Sauvage Elixir from Dior. And then, of course, my number 1 favorite elixir is Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Male. I actually really, really love this one. Again, it's that same group, Puig, that's also controlling PACO Rabanne fragrances. And it's robust, it's intense, and I like that about it. I don't think it's as intense as the Invictus. I think the Invictus here is the most potent. It's so loud. But this one is up there. It's pretty close. This is tonka beans, mint, lavender, benzoin, vanilla. Once again, Quinton Biche. I've been talking a lot about Quinton Biche lately. This is a fragrance he created. He did a great job in this. It might come off a bit too young, maybe not so mature like the Boss Bottled, and maybe even the Sauvage Elixir are a bit more mature and a bit more classy. This is more young and playful and energetic and things like that. But I love the way the aromatics are combined with the warm notes. It's just really nicely done. Again, Quinton Biche does some great work, a lot of great niche fragrances, but sometimes in the designers as well. This is Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Male Elixir, and I featured it here at number 1. What are your thoughts on these elixirs? And also, do let me know if I'm missing any elixirs. I couldn't find any others. Maybe there's some out there that are hidden. This is probably since the launch of Dior Sauvage Elixir, because there used to be, there's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fragrances out there called Elixir, but this is not the kind of elixirs we're talking about here. The elixir theme of fragrances. Yeah, put a comment down if there are any others that I'm missing. And of course, we're not going to talk about YSL's Y Elixir. Just the only thing I'm going to say is it was boring when I, sampled it. And of course, Hugo Boss's The Scent Elixir for him. I want to circle back to that one. But then Loewe's Essentia Elixir did smell a bit like Aventus. Although I feel like the original in the EDP smells a lot like Aventus, and this elixir smelled kind of more of a concentrated take on elixir. But do let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. How would you rank this list? Put a comment down below. And thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.